Hello, and welcome to today's Candidates Forum for State Legislative District 20. Today's candidates are running for state representative. On my immediate left is John Morgan, and next to him is Ed Orcutt, our current incumbent. Today's Candidates Forum is sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Thurston County and TCTV. The League is a nonpartisan political organization that helps elucidate and study issues that are of concern and impact to local citizens, as well as the National League and state leagues who take on larger issues that go before the public. We want to welcome you to today's forum. My name is LWV. I will be moderating today's program, and we're going to start with introductions from both candidates. Both will be given 2 minutes to explain their candidacies, and then we'll begin with questions on an alternating basis. So to begin, Mr. Morgan, 2 minutes.
Okay, well, I'm John Morgan. I'm asking your vote because, well, for a change in government, we need to go back to what the framers of our government originally intended. A representative stands to represent the people, not himself. And the way I propose to do this is have town meetings, pull the people directly through coffees, internet, also maybe phone and fax, but mainly getting out to see the people themselves in the different areas and finding out how they want me to vote on the issues that are at hand, which is very important because it's their vote, not mine. It's my basis of what we want to do. Also, we need to get a permanent prohibition on the state income tax to eliminate any possibility of that happening. Possibly get a reduction in the sales tax. Mainly, we need to revisit, revamp, go through and redo some of the regulations we've got going on, especially in the small business, because the small business is 96% of the state, and we got a lot of regulation that's prohibiting small business from making a good profit. Yet we still have to protect the consumer at the same time, so there's going to have to be a balance. A better balance needs to be struck. Some of it has to be rolled back. Also, we need to look into some of the things, the issues of education. I have a lot of teachers that tell me that they're teaching kids to pass a test and not really getting to the basics of what they need to know. So we need to get in and investigate that and correct that if we can. Possibly get them some more money. So let's see what we can do in that area.
Mr. Orcutt.
Well, thank you. First of all, I want to thank the League for having us here today. I am State Representative Ed Orcutt. I've been serving in the legislature for 11 years now. And in my 11 years, I have worked to do some of the very things that my opponent is talking about. I've worked to protect taxpayers, try to protect against tax increases, provide tax relief to our employers. I've also been working on regulatory relief for our employers. And the first step I think that we need to take is to stop the onslaught of new regulations. That's why 2 years ago I wrote a letter to the governor of the state and requested that we have a rulemaking moratorium. Yeah, maybe some rules need to be rolled back, and I agree many do need to be rolled back, but the first thing we need to do is stop all the new regulations coming. Three months after I requested that rulemaking moratorium, we actually did get an executive order from the governor creating a rule-making moratorium. Unfortunately, we still have way too many people in Olympia writing rules, and under the moratorium, we still had 1,410 new rules written in that time period. There's more that needs to be done. That's why I've introduced legislation to put tighter restrictions on what rules can be written, reduce the number of people who are employed in Olympia for the purpose of writing rules, because those rules do make it more difficult for our employers to expand their businesses and put people back to work. That's got to be our #1 focus, is getting people back to work. We hear a lot about the state budget, the federal budget, county budgets, city budgets. The most important budget is the one that sits on your kitchen table. When we resolve the problems that you're having balancing your budget on your kitchen table, we'll have plenty of revenue to balance our budgets at all different levels of government. I'm Ed Orcutt. I've been representing the citizens in Southwest Washington for 11 years, and I'm asking for your support for another 2 years.
Thank you, gentlemen. Now, as I said earlier, I'm going to be asking you alternating questions, so the person asked the question initially will have a couple of minutes. The respondent will then have a minute. So we'll just go back and forth, okay? Are you ready? I'm going to start with you, Mr. Orcutt, if you don't mind. The first question is a bit long and it has a couple of different segments. So let me begin by saying of the approximately 770 tax breaks, fewer than 50 have sunset review process clauses to examine their usefulness after a period of time. This also means that over 700 of the state's tax breaks have no review process. What do you think about this, and what, if anything, would you propose to do about it?
Actually, I hate to tell you this, but the information you have is incorrect.
Correct.
Because we have a process. It's the, and sorry, I wasn't expecting the question, so I can't remember exactly what, it's a citizens advisory group that reviews all of the tax exemptions. And it's done through the Joint Legislative Audit Review Committee and this citizens advisory group. So all of the tax incentives are being reviewed and recommendations are being brought back to the legislature, whether to amend them, let them expire, eliminate them, or continue them. So they are all being looked at.
May I ask how often that occurs? By statute or just by practice?
Every year there is a certain set of them that are being reviewed.
Okay.
So I think over a 10-year period they'll all get reviewed, or very close to all of them. And I think in a 10-year period is when they're going to.
So they don't attempt to do each one every year or every 2 years or whatever, but over an extended period of time. Is that what you're saying?
Well, because there is a large number of the tax incentives, then it does take time to get through the entire review process. But they are going through them.
Okay. Mr. Morgan, do you have any comments you'd like to make on that, given that we've been corrected in what our acknowledged understanding of the process is?
Well, nobody's perfect, but if there's, the simple fact of the matter is, you've got a committee and so many rules and laws that have to be looked over. They have to have time to do it in a diligent manner, and that takes time. It just can't all be done in one day. Mm-hmm. So depending on a deal, like you said, 700 of them, you'd have to have, if you did one a day, it would take 700 days. That's 3 years' time.
Okay, great. Any other input, since that went fairly quickly, given your correction of our information? Okay. The next question is for you, Mr. Morgan. Do you support charter schools for the state of Washington, and if not, why not?
Well, that's going to be up to the people, the majority of the 20th district, because it's their vote and their decision, not mine. If they want charter schools, then that's how I'll support them. If they don't, then I don't support them. Personally, I think maybe the state could use some competition, but I'd like to look in to see a little bit more about how much money is being taken out of the general school system, because right now it needs all the dollars it can get. And you're talking about money that's going to follow the student. So it's going to pull money out of the schools that they desperately need to put into charter school. But as I said, it's up to the people of the district. There's their children, it's their vote, not mine. If that's what they want, that's what they should get.
Okay. Mr. Orcutt.
I actually support charter schools, and when it comes up on the ballot, I'm going to be voting yes. I think the more different forms of school choice that we have, the better chance that we have finding the right learning method for every student in our state. And if that helps get more people to graduation, get students in our state better educated and more prepared to go out into the world, I think it's a good thing. I also support vocational education. I think it's absolutely critical. You know, we can educate all the engineers in the world, but if we don't have anybody to build the buildings to house them, what have we done? We've done nothing for our economy. So there needs to be a variety of educational choices and different ways to learn. And I think charter schools can be an important part of that.
Okay, very good. Mr. Orcutt, I'm going to ask you the next question, please. Are you concerned about global climate change, And if you are concerned, what do you propose to do about it? Or if not, why not?
Well, I think this is a little bit overblown. I think it's a little bit of an alarmism. I do think that we need to try to be as efficient with our use of fuel as we possibly can be. Sometimes I think some of the regulations move us in the wrong direction. I've talked with some people in the trucking industry, and some of the emissions controls they've put on actually lower fuel economy on trucks, which means now you're burning more fossil fuels, therefore putting more carbon into the atmosphere. But I think in the industry that I'm in the timber industry where we grow and harvest trees. And growing and harvesting trees is probably one of the best ways to sequester carbon out of the atmosphere. And so I think there is a natural balance here in nature. And we can do some things to enhance these sequestration opportunities with our forests by managing them well. Manage them well so they don't burn up and emit absolutely more carbon into the atmosphere, which is what they're doing right now. But we know that weather goes in patterns. And every time I see a list of the 10 hottest days or hottest years on record, there's one or two in about every 20-year time period. So it tells me that it's cyclical. Mm-hmm. And some of my forestry education, we've talked about 50-year storms, 100-year storms, so we know there are cycles in the weather. And I think more of what's happening is us going through a cycle right now.
Okay. Now, the next question goes to you again, Mr. Morgan. The courts have said that Washington's not living up to its obligation to fully fund basic education. So my question to you is, how do you define basic education, and how do you propose the state fund it?
Basic education would be kindergarten through 12, but should be most likely should be expanded to a couple of years in college as well, with the way technology is today. So we funding it difference. Some people want to raise taxes. I've looked at the comprehensive annual financial report, and it tells me there's several $billion that are available. It can be transferred to education without any problem to the taxpayers or the state. The money's there. It's just a matter of putting it into. When you have an accounting system that tells you that you have to include 20 to 75 years of future obligations at the bottom line for every year, tells me there's a problem with that accounting system. That's not how I do my accounting. If I did that, I would be a deficit every year or two in my accounting. If I added my entire mortgage payment to the end of my bottom line for the year, of course I would have a deficit. But that's not the way the game's played. So there's money out there we could use. I think we should be using it for that.
Okay. Mr. Orcutt.
I think we need to fund education first and not last. And what you tend to see in the legislature, unfortunately, is you get into a budget shortfall, or a deficit. Some people think that our revenues have declined. They've actually gone up. We're actually looking at spending $2 billion more in this biennium than we did in the last. Part of the deficit we had was we're on an unrealistic trajectory with spending. But we're still spending, I think, about $13 billion every 2 years on K through 12 education. And I think if you look at the balance of our state budget, I think there's room to move some money over to do that. But we've also asked the local school districts to fund more and more. And I think if we pull some of those local levies into the state, then the state will be fully funding education. I think that's a potential solution to cover the $1 billion mandate that we're going to have from the courts in the next biennium, and over $3 billion in future biennia.
Interesting. Okay, thank you. Mr. Orcutt, the state's parks permit program brought in only half of the revenue that was projected from those sales. Additionally, the legislature has provided zero funding, to our knowledge, in the budget for state parks in the next biennium. How would you legislate to keep our state parks open and operating?
Well, this has been a big problem. I'm not a big fan of the Discover Pass. A lot of people have been very upset with it. I think that we need to open our state parks back up and increase our visitorship. I think what we need to do is just get the economy moving again and get money rolling back in. Fund education first, fund our parks, fund corrections, fund services for those who truly need them, for people who are here legally, and not focus on those that are undocumented or here illegally. I think we give out more in benefits to those on welfare or public assistance than other states do, and we've heard testimony in the legislature of people saying, don't cut this, I came to this state for this benefit. And that tells me that we're being a little too generous. We need to enable people to go back to work rather than disable them by keeping them on welfare.
Okay. Mr. Morgan?
State parks are a national heritage. They should be funded. And sometimes, with the pass system, I don't have that much. We have one of the vehicles. I don't have that much contact with it, unfortunately. But I know that with a lot of state parks are also funded by hunting licenses, so hunters could use them, and some of that money goes there. So where's the money going from? I'd have to look into it. If they say they're not making enough because people aren't going to the parks. As far as I know, parks are always packed in advance on the internet. It's hard to get a spot. So that's curious to say they don't have enough money. So where's it being spent?
You're saying national parks or state parks?
State parks. You go online, you book your space online. So if you don't do it way ahead of time, you're not going to get one. Okay. They're pretty well packed.
All right. Mr. Morgan, our next question has to do with the establishment or potential establishment of export terminals. So my question is, do you favor establishing coal export terminals in Washington? And more specifically, if your closest area that you would be aware of that this might be a facility would be Olympia for us here. But obviously there's other potential terminal sites along the Columbia, et cetera. So our question again is, do you support such terminals? And why would you favor or not favor them, and where?
Isn't that a private business? Is that going to be state-run, or is it a private business? The terminals would be a private business. So to adhere to the environmental controls, they would have to be covered in some way, which is going to be expensive. In order to transfer the coal here, you can't put it in, they will put it in an uncovered hopper. They need to put covers on it so the dust doesn't go everywhere. Any load that comes through that has dust or anything like that needs to have a cover on it. I don't care if it's on a truck or on a train. I know they don't cover it right now, but they need to put a cover on it in order to contain the material as it's being transported. Wind comes up, blows it all over the stuff. I've been in a situation where I passed a truck that didn't have a cover, and it was hauling sand, but it also was like driving by a sandblaster. Mm-hmm. So you need to have covered loads if you're going to be transporting anything of that kind of nature. It's up to the people. Coal is a viable resource. It's one of the resources we're rich in. We need to exploit that for our economy, and probably that would be a good idea. But you're going to have to keep it clean, and we've got the technology to do it. So if you're going to do it in a clean manner.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Orcutt.
Well, down in my area of the 20th District, not far west of my area, in Longview, they are proposing one of the terminals. And so I've taken it upon myself to actually look when I see coal trains moving up and down the main line. And there are a number of places along I-5 you can actually see this. And I look and I don't see a bit of dust. And I'm actively looking to see if there's any dust coming off these coal trains. There's none. I don't see any at all. And those trains are moving between 40 and 60 miles an hour, and no dust is coming off. Those coal trains have come all the way from Wyoming. How much dust can there possibly be? And they actually put an agent on there to try and control the dust anyway. I think probably the most important thing that we can do is force those that are importing coal from us to use adequate environmental controls and emission controls on their facilities to make sure that they keep their air clean when they're burning coal.
Okay, thank you. Well, we have come to the end of our candidate forum questionnaire period. So now I have a minute for time for each of you to give your closing statement and an opportunity to convince the voters that you're the candidate for them. So we'll begin with you, Mr. Orcutt.
Well, thank you again. I want to thank the League for having us here today. As an 11-year veteran of the state legislature, I've already got a track record of working for the citizens of this state, trying to get people back to work. My number one goal is jobs, and it has to be, because everything depends upon people having jobs. When you look at our employers, a lot of people want to condemn our employers and just try to restrict business, but they pay a huge amount of the tax burden in this state. And if we can allow them to expand, they naturally will expand how much tax revenue that they're providing to the state. Now the citizens have more money in their pockets, the state will have more money in theirs, and we'll be able to move forward in a sustainable manner, protecting private property rights, protecting taxpayers. That's what I've been doing, and I ask you to send me back to Olympia for 2 more years to continue the work I've already been doing for you. Thank you.
Mr. Morgan.
Yes, well, it's just joke. Well, we opened John Morgan Trucking about 10 years ago. You know, and since then we've operated in a cutthroat market, and it's very tough to survive in. You have to make good decisions every day and every week in order to keep the operation rolling in a profitable manner. This we have in Farmers Nest, we have that in common in small business transportation. So I know what it's like to operate a business in a very hostile market. So it takes a lot of work and a lot of thinking and along the ways, and you have to look at what you're doing all the time in order to keep it on balance. So I have an idea of what we need to do in order to help other business owners stay in business. Reduce regulation, bring back a little bit more prosperity, help with the education along those lines, and basically, you know, just get the job done.
Okay, thank you, candidates, very much. We welcome the opportunity to get to know both of you better. And we welcome the opportunity for you viewers to take some time to discuss and overview the information that was provided by the candidates, and we hope that you'll take this opportunity too to prepare and participate in the coming election in November. This is an important time for all of us to take extra time to make sure that we're casting a vote in a fashion that does service to our families, our communities, and to our state. The League of Women Voters and TCTV thanks you for your time. I want to thank everybody who's participated today, in particular the candidates, for coming and joining us and giving us their views. We hope you'll stay safe on the trail. Good luck to you both, and we hope we can see you both again.
Thank you.
So take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.